Filmed live in Canada, it's Jim's Record Party. Hello everyone, welcome to Jim's Record Party. My name is James, I'm your host as always. It's so nice to have you with us. As today on this very hot, very early summer day, we look at Acoustic Blues, the Masters, beginning with Scrapper Blackwell. Here on Yazoo, the virtuoso guitar of Scrapper Blackwell, and yes it is, one of the originators of the single string break. And most well known, perhaps, certainly, actually, as the partner of Leroy Carr, the great pianist and vocalist, and Scrapper himself, an excellent vocalist, as you'll hear on this album. Compilation, many others, several others represented alongside Scrapper on this album. Born in 1904 in Syracuse, South Carolina. Tunes on this album from 28 to 34. Here, Yazoo, the great blues album. Compilation company, Yazoo. Passed in 1962, still a young man, one of the greats, Scrapper Blackwell. Brings us to our second album here on Jim's Record Party. Lonnie Johnson, the originator of the modern guitar blues, and he pretty much was the originator of the single string break. Born in 1899 in New Orleans, passed in 1970. Tunes on this album, 1941 to 1952. This is a Blues Boy compilation. Thank you, Leanne, for this album. This is probably a birthday present in Vancouver. In the mid-1980s, Victoria Spivey, Bessie Smith, Duke Ellington, Eddie Lang, James P. Johnson, Roosevelt Sykes, and he also appears playing alongside the banjoist Johnny St. Cyr on several Louis Armstrong and his Hot Five recordings. And many, many others. Lonnie Johnson spanned the history of 20th century blues up until his death in 1970, played every genre, played electric guitar, one of the very first, an influence on Charlie Christian amongst many, many others. This is Lonnie Johnson, one of the great Johnsons of the blues, here on Jim's Record Party. Brings us to the king, Robert Johnson. This album's entitled, this pair of albums, The King of the Country, or the Delta Blues singers, but also certainly guitar players and songwriters. And there's the better known second album cover. Compilations, these on Columbia from his two recording sessions in November 36 in San Antonio and June 1937 in Dallas. These were recorded pretty much in converted hotel rooms made into be quasi-studios. Crossroad Blues, Come On in My Kitchen, Kind-Hearted Woman Blues, Hellhound on My Trail, Dust My Broom, Sweet Home Chicago, Love in Vain. These and many others are the songs of Robert Johnson, perhaps the single greatest acoustic guitar player, singer-songwriter, Delta Blues, born in 1911 in Hazelhurst, Mississippi, passed in 1938. Very, very young man, very young when he recorded these. These are Bibles of the blues. We'll show that second album again, if we can, and there it is. Beautiful illustration, really, of what it would have been like for Robert alone in a hotel room, singing into a single mic for both his vocal and his guitar. Robert Johnson recorded so important to Eric Clapton, every electric blues guitarist that came after him, every guitarist that came after him, every singer that came after him. The Rolling Stones, Love in Vain, of course, Dust My Broom, Sweet Home Chicago, songs that everyone plays because there are classics written and played by Robert Johnson originally, king of the Delta Blues. This brings us to the next great Johnson, Blind Willie Johnson. Born in 1897 in Pendleton, Texas. These recordings from 1927 to 1930, again, here we're on Yazoo. Great illustration. A street singer primarily throughout his life. Died in 1945, still a very young man. Some of these recordings with his wife, Angeline, at the time. Dark was the night, cold was the ground. Great slide playing, the greatest early slide player, so important to so many. Ry Cooder, among many others, recording that song and paying tribute to Blind Willie. Praise God, I'm satisfied. By and by, I'm going to see the King. A gospel singer and a man who played what he felt. A great accompanist to his own vocaling. Blind Willie Johnson, here on Jim's Record Party. Blind Willie McTell, 1927 to 1933. These recordings unusually played on a 12-string acoustic. If you've ever picked up a 12-string, you know there is very little room to get your fingers in. And he did, a master. These are recordings from 1927 to 1933. Born in Thompson, Georgia, passed in 1959. Again, a very young gentleman. Very high voice, played a 12-string. His most famous tune, Statesboro Blues, covered by so many, the Allman Brothers, of course. Also Georgia Rag, the ultimate absolute recording here. Again on Yazoo, Blind Willie McTell, here on Jim's Record Party. A master, Charlie Patton, born in 1887 in Edwards, Mississippi. Some of these recorded with his wife, Bertha Lee, over the period 1929 to 1934. Very, very idiosyncratic vocalist, writer, founder of the Delta Blues, indeed. 1887 to 1890, we don't even really know specifically the date of his birth, passed in 1934, again a very young man. These recordings, 1929 to 1934, Spoonful Blues, one of the classics. When Your Way Gets Dark and Poor Me, among many others. This is a beautiful compilation, double album on Yazoo with extensive notes, an outstanding package. Charlie Patton, founder of the Delta Blues. Brings us to our final album today on Jim's Record Party. We're talking about country blues, acoustic blues. We featured a lot of guitar players. We're going to end with a fine, fine pianist, Roosevelt Sykes. We spoke of him earlier when we were speaking about Lonnie Johnson playing with Roosevelt. Well, he did. The country blues piano ace, 1929 to 1932. These recordings, again on Yazoo, have been reprocessed into stereo, unusually, for Yazoo. I don't know what the backstory is on that. A very beautiful listen, nonetheless. What a beautiful portrait here of Roosevelt. He's got his beautiful suit, smoking a beautiful cigar, clean shaven, ready to play. Played everywhere. A lot of bars, a lot of bordellos, a lot of everywhere. House parties. Born in 1906 in Helena, Arkansas, passed in 1983, and played with James P. Johnson. I believe there's a cut or two on this album, again on Yazoo, of them duoing on pianists, two of the greatest ever. Roosevelt Sykes, a country acoustic pianist with citified leanings and leaning into what would become jazz as we know it, 1929 to 1932. These are very early recordings. Extremely excellent vocalist as well, and accompaniments to his own voice, Roosevelt Sykes. Well, that brings us to the end of another side here on Jim's Record Party. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us as we've looked at acoustic country blues on this hot early summer day. I wish you all well for the summer ahead. We'll see you again next week on this same channel at this same time. Please comment, like, and subscribe. And join us again on Jim's Record Party as we look at more great albums.